Hey everybody, it's Stephen. So last night I was reading a book written by a Christian theologian in Syria, in northeastern Syria, in the mid 800s. A church that was long dissociated from the Byzantine Church. That dissociation really finally happened in the 500s at the Council of Chalcedon, where the Byzantine Church said we agree to this, and the Syrian, the Eastern Church said no, we don't agree with it. So the two split, and then because of a war with Persia that had happened, the Byzantine Church was unable to sort of defend its Syrian church, and so it left them to their own devices. Of course, not long after that, the Arab conquest happened. So I'm talking about a theologian now, a Christian theologian, well after not only the separation of the Eastern Church, but after the Arab conquest. And I was reading, he was writing about a commentary on the Gospel of John. And I thought that would be interesting because John is particularly Greek in his way of thinking. Not man ascending, not man through acts becoming godlike, but God descending into man. So that's this sort of Greek philosophical. The other gospels are synoptic gospels are this. We begin with the man and how the man is proven to be God, but in John it's the opposite. And the synoptics are more of an Eastern Church kind of an idea, and an embodied idea, and then John is more of a Greek philosophical, the light descends from above kind of a thing, rather than the light emanates from the heart, which would be the synoptics. But anyway, so I'm reading about John because I thought, well, this would be interesting to see what this guy in the 800s, who's well separated from the Greek Church, how he's going to be reacting to John. And so I'm reading along, and the last thing I expected to see was just an offhand mention about Saint Ignatius. So Saint Ignatius is a saint in the I don't know. He's living in the between the time of Christ and about a little over 100. 100 AD, so extraordinarily long life, but things get warped. Histories get warped from if you go that far back. So anyway, and in that he was saying, well, this Ignatius who was blessed by Christ. That first of all, that made me think, wait a minute, why don't I know that? Because that's not something I think that's well known. And then the next was that the St. Ignatius, he was talking about how he had a vision of two heavenly choirs of angels. And that really struck a note because of things that I've been thinking about in this physics meets theology. So that was so I started doing a little investigating, and I thought, oh my goodness, there is this long story of how when the apostles were saying, how should we behave? This is very early on. I think it's in Luke. And the apostles are saying, well, how should we behave? And Christ pulls a child out and says, like this child, we should behave as a child unto God. And the story is that that child was Ignatius, later became Saint Ignatius. And Saint Ignatius had a vision of two choirs in heaven singing, and he built a church that would have two choirs. He very much promoted this idea. You should have two choirs that are singing antiphonally, right? That are singing call and response. That's where that comes from. Antiphonal apparently comes from Ignatius. Who knew? And what's really interesting about this twin choir, this twin choir idea, and is that then when Saint Ignatius is finally martyred, he goes to Rome to not confess to idols in Rome, and then he gets thrown into with the lions in the stadium, So, and the image of the icon of Saint Ignatius being attacked by the lions in his martyrdom. One of the lions is upside up and biting his shoulder, and the other lion is upside down and biting his ankle. And on the lion with the shoulder side are looking on the kings, and on the lion biting the ankle upside down side are the priests. So what? There's a lot there. But that really sort of struck a chord, and I'll be explaining why. Probably in the next couple of videos, because this is going to get long, I think. So I just want to set this up. So last night, reading St. Ignatius, oh my goodness, was he the child that was pulled out by Christ as an example? And then he had the vision of the two choirs, and then he set up his churches such that they had this antiphonal singing, which is, obviously to this day is an inspired sort of thing, where you have choirs that are calling and responding to each other across the congregation. It's a very powerful idea. And I sing in the choir in my church, and I've been asking about this. This is all new, and I've been asking in my church about, hey, do we ever do that? Because one night there was a soloist that was singing the Vespers, like they're singing the Vespers solo, which is quite a feat. And the person singing would say it's not a feat at all, but it appears quite a feat to me. And the way she was singing it, she's my godmother too, so I was listening carefully. The way she was singing it was as call and response. She was singing it as call and response. And I had heard her sing before, and I think I had heard her solo the Vespers before, but I had never noticed that. I asked her after, what, that was call and response. What was going on there? She goes, yeah, I noticed that too. I was doing call and response there. It's just like this. So that was maybe a month ago. So I don't know if that's sort of a setup to my thinking this way, but it's interesting. So there's that idea. And then a couple days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, I had been, where did I pick up this idea that so there's a theologian in Paris in the late 1000s, so early 1100s, at a school that's called St. Victor. And this school is right before Aquinas and Bonaventure, so right before scholasticism really took hold, and the full-on endorsement of Aristotle, Aristotelian thought, scientific, you could say, sort of thinking, leading to the Renaissance in the Western world, in the scholasticism of Paris with Aquinas. But right before that was the School of St. Victor, which was still deeply theological, and also the School of St. Victor was in an odd way, it was Eastern. It had like this Syrian sort of bent to it, which is really fascinating, because the Paris school that grew out of it with Aquinas was expressly Greek, was especially philosophical. So it went from, but these Victorine guys, we call them Victorines, the guys that were teaching at the School of St. Victor, it was a very embodied, very the heart, and they were using like physical structures, like the Noah's Ark, or the construction of a church to give sermons about your soul. So the stone of the church represents a certain aspect of your being, and the wooden structures inside represent another, and then the gold leaf covered things on the altar represent another thing still. So they were very very embodied. It's metaphorical, but it's physical. So very Eastern, very Syrian. this is all kind of interesting and happening right now when all this activity is happening in Syria too. So like all this thinking of this Syrian stuff. But anyway, so on the ark are the two cherubim or the seraphim, whichever. I don't know that it matters what you think about the cherubim, seraphim. So these angels, and between them is the glory seat. The idea is the seat of God, the judgment seat of God, and God says I talked about this yesterday, is that God in Exodus says you can meet me here. You can meet me here between the cherubim on the. And so the cherubim are acting as sort of like an area for God to reside, to bring his message in a physical way, right? He can speak, or the assumption is a more physical way rather than this transcendent way. So presaging Jesus, I suppose. So these two seraphim on top of the ark, facing each other, acting in some way to bring about God's ability, or God using those seraphim to have the ability to come down and speak to men, right? So yeah, very much presaging. So Jesus, and then this other idea that Saint Ignatius has these. Has this vision of these two choirs, and then ends up being martyred by these in a very specific way on the iconography as having these two lions. So you can see I have some kind of opponent, idea here, some kind of that I'll get to. I'll sort of flesh out tomorrow. You can probably start to guess a little bit of it if you've been paying attention, and why would you? But if you've been paying attention to the way that I'm going in my theological, scientific sort of way. So I will continue this tomorrow. Thanks.